everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's plant-powered session, Truth versus Trend. I'm Kara Tibby, and I manage the lifestyle medicine practice at Corewell Health, and I have the privilege today of introducing one of our physicians within the lifestyle medicine practice, Dr. Vollmer. Before I introduce her, just a reminder that any questions that come in will be answered at the end of the session. We'll have some time for that. So please place any questions you might have in the chat. So welcome, Dr. Vollmer. Dr. Vollmer is a graduate from MSU College of Human Medicine. She's also board certified in physical medicine and rehabilitation and trained at UCLA VA Greater Los Angeles Healthcare System program and is fellowship trained in interventional spine at the University of Michigan. In 2020, she became certified in lifestyle medicine and began working collaboratively with Corewell Health. She now works full-time here in the Corewell Health Lifestyle Medicine Specialty Practice and has been voted a Grand Rapids top doctor consecutive years since 2019. So without further ado, welcome, Dr. Vollmer. We're excited to hear your presentation.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. The theme this week has been a lot of plant-based proteins, and today we're going to try and debunk some of those myths, answer some questions. I know there's a lot of commentary about eating more plant forward, and I'm hoping that I can answer some of the questions that you have today so that you can share some of it with your family and friends. There's been some great sessions this week. If you missed them at all, we have some great cooking webinars that show you how to use more plant sources. And there was another session earlier this week from Dr. Dudley on plant-based protein specifically. So if you have additional questions about those or would love to see real life examples, go back and watch some of those other episodes that we've had earlier this week. Without further ado, though, I'd like to get into some of the top things that I hear in our medical practice here in lifestyle medicine about more plant forward eating. I would say like the top 10 common questions that I receive in clinical practice. Today is meant to be educational. This is not meant to be one-on-one individualized medical advice. So if you are looking for more unique individualized medical advice, I would ask you to come in and see us in the medical practice. We take referrals. You do not actually need a referral from your primary care provider or specialist to come see us, and you can schedule yourself into our specialty practice and check your insurance authorization with our team if needed. So if you were looking for one-on-one medical advice, we encourage you to come see one of our specialists. Thanks for letting me know, Tara. Sorry, I could see all of you, and now hopefully that's not covering your slides right now. Let's get started. So, top question number one. A plant-based diet means I can only eat plants. We're not talking about just eating leafy greens for the rest of your life when we're talking about a foundation of being more plant-based. This is an eating pattern that supports diversity, flavor, optimization of gut health, brain health. It's great for planetary health, longevity, and disease improvement and reversal. The foundation is in whole plant foods. We want to improve your health span by incorporating more whole grains, beans, legumes, fruits, and vegetables, those categories that are shown to improve your overall health span. The unfortunate thing is that the standard American diet, which many of us consume or were raised on, is only 6% whole plant foods. 12% of our diet, that 6% plus another 6% includes more plant processed versions. So 12% of our current diet. That means that this triangle is actually reverse in most occasions. We eat fundamentally commercially raised meats, sweets, processed carbs, other sources of animal proteins, eggs, oils, fish, poultry, dairy are at the top of our food consumption. Only 6 to 12% is the bottom of this pyramid. What we want to help you learn to understand by working with our team and attending this Plant Power Challenge is that a plant-based diet can be diverse. It can be Mediterranean, flexitarian, pescatarian, vegetarian, vegan. There are different degrees to which you can become plant-based. You can become whole food plant-based, or you can be partial. The key is that we want you fundamentally for health and disease remission to be eating the bottom of this pyramid as much as possible, 70, 80% of your diet. And that is where you see true success. It can be an evolution. It doesn't have to be overnight. A lot of our, you can jump in and change a lot of things at once, but we work with you in the lifestyle medicine department to help you evolve your diet quality over time. One of the next top questions I get is, are carbs bad for me? Should I go keto? Keto has been trendy for years. It's been Atkins. Carnivore diet is really a trendy term right now. The issue is the myth is that carbohydrates are bad for you. And you can read that fact right below it, and I'll kind of talk about it. Refined carbohydrates like white breads, added sugars, polished, grains are associated with negative health outcomes: overweight, obesity, metabolic disorders, heart disease, type 2 diabetes. These are conditions that are associated with refined carbohydrates and high consumption of them. They're found predominantly in processed foods like this bagel. Refined carbohydrates make up the bulk of carbohydrates consumed by Americans. That's something we can all agree upon, is that the amount of refined carbohydrates in our diet needs to be decreased. A scientific review of studies that follows a large group of people found that low-carb diets were associated with a higher risk of dying from all cause in general. Keto diets have been shown to increase cholesterol levels. In contrast, more plant-forward diets, when you use like steel-cut oatmeal, they're higher in fiber, antioxidants, phytonutrients, lower in sodium, regularly shown to reduce cholesterol, and healthy plant-based diets are associated with lower mortality. So the key is to not exclude carbohydrates, all carbohydrates. The key is to start to move away from refined carbohydrates, ultra-processed carbohydrates. Use carbs in their original version the way nature intended it as much as possible, or as close to their original version as much as possible. And then you start to see the benefits. They are a preferred fuel source. Your body wants to use carbs for activity, energy, and it's your brain's only source of energy, fundamentally. Are sugar-free products healthy? It's a great question we commonly get. Should I be using aspartame-based when I'm diabetic, non-diabetic, pre-diabetic, just trying to move away from things that have sugar additives? The hard thing is that when these products were created, things say sugar-free now, but it means there's probably still an artificial sweetener in it in some degree. So really starting to learn to read your labels and identifying, is there some sort of aspartame added to it? Sucralose, something processed. Artificial sweeteners actually trick our brains to crave more sweets. So in a San Antonio Heart Study, you can see that high diet soda drinkers per week were 2 times as likely to become overweight or obese versus non-diet drinkers, debunking that myth that drinking diet sodas and consuming sugar-free products contribute to weight loss. They do not. And they may be as addictive as other substances because they commonly hit our brain centers that are enlight the possibility of us becoming addicted to them, similar to other products that we become addicted to. Your taste buds can be overstimulated so that real sweets and fruits or plain water just don't taste as good. Think about this. As the first thing, you put something sweet on your tongue says, sugar's coming. Your brain thinks, oh, I'm going to get sugar. The problem is that sugar never comes. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but our taste buds need to recalibrate and detox from these sugars in order to appreciate real fruits more so. So give yourself time, about 3 weeks, to detox yourself from processed and artificial sugars to be able to appreciate foods with less added sweetness. There's also an unclear risk of large amounts of artificial sweeteners in our diet. Aspartame with cancer, other sweeteners. There are concerns. We do not want to be consuming a ton of sugar-free products in our diet, and they contribute to insulin resistance. I've had patients come in all the time that talk about when they get rid of the artificial sweeteners as when they're diabetics, their insulin resistance improves, and they're shocked because they thought that they were sugar-free and they were healthy for them. It's not true. What happens is that your brain, these artificial sweeteners like aspartame, still cause your body's cephalic phase of insulin secretion to happen. So it hits the tongue, your tongue thinks sugar's coming, it doesn't happen. Your body still secretes insulin to respond to it. So it's driving this insulin resistance, increasing your insulin levels, even though you're having something that's perceived as sugar-free. High insulin levels drive cellular proliferation in your coronary arteries, breast tissue, cardiovascular disease, and cancer, ultimately leading to burnout of pancreas, which perpetuates diabetes. So now what we want to look at is the importance of getting artificial things from a metabolic standpoint out of your dietary pattern and using natural sweetness from fruits. Take water with lemon and lime and do that instead of a Crystal Light in water, as an example. Next common question that I get, are soy products okay? Does soy cause cancer? Will it affect my hormones? I mean, I don't know if many of you some on the today grew up with the Got Milk campaign. Very, very trendy. All the celebrities were saying, milk makes you strong. Now there's a new campaign out in the last few decades, in the last few years, sorry, the Silk campaign, the Next Milk, almond-based, trying to drive the education about plant-based milks as being an alternative and a pretty darn good alternative. Let's answer some of these questions that I just raised. Does soy cause cancer? So soy is actually, the ingredients in soy are phytoestrogens, and they have a similar molecular structure to estrogen. Therefore, there's always been concern that soy could stimulate hormone-sensitive cancers. Well, in fact, the opposite is true. It turns out there's two types of receptors in your body of estrogen receptors, alpha and beta. Estrogen receptors beta have anti-estrogen properties, proliferative tumor suppressive properties. They suppress tumor formation. So different tissues have different receptors, as you can see in this body. So there's alpha and beta receptors, say in your breast tissue, in your bone tissue. The soy isoflavones and food consumption, soy, have predominantly beta receptor activity. This helps to explain why there's a protective effects of soy. No endocrine proliferation. So there's a decreased risk of endometrial, ovarian, endocrine-related tumors, as well as colon and prostate cancer with soy consumption. Your goal is to consume soy in its original and minimally processed version as much as possible. Edamame, tempeh, tofu are great options to start to get more soy in your life. Dairy and breast cancer. Do we really need to got milk? Looking at these multiple studies, we recognize that higher consumption of cheddar or cream cheese, as you can see on the left, this NCI study from 2017 at a higher risk of breast cancer. Life after cancer, serving of high fats, dairy had 50% almost higher breast cancer mortality compared to those who had less than a half a serving a day. National Cancer Institute's, NIH, and World Health Research saw incremental increases in risk of breast cancer with the more cow's milk consumption a patient had per day. So we know that milk and other dairy products are the top sources of artery clogging saturated fats in our diet, but milk products also contain cholesterol. Diets high in fats, cholesterol, increase our risk of heart disease, which remains America's top killer. Cheese is especially high in saturated fats, typically 70% fats. Research has linked that high fat consumption and hormones in milk, cheese, and other dairy products may contribute to breast cancer. Similar findings for prostate and ovarian cancer. A good read for this is The Cheese Trap by Dr. Neil Barnard. If you're interested in learning how we've been trapped by cheese all these years, as a former cheesehead, born in Wisconsin, I understand that this thought process of moving away from as much cheese or dairy in our life seems frightful, but it is possible. And there is light on the other side. And on top of that, most of our population and different ethnicities, a good number of us are already lactose intolerant. Our body is not designed to consume lactose products. 95% of Asian Americans, 74% of Native Americans, 70% of African Americans, 53% of Mexican Americans, and 15% of Caucasians are lactose intolerant. So when you have that ice cream and it doesn't quite feel good going down, might be a sign to you that maybe we shouldn't be having as much of this in the first place. Your body's telling you you don't need it. Another look at soy and breast cancer. So soy food has been consistently shown to inversely related to breast cancer risk, mortality, and risk of recurrence. So the quantity of phytoestrogens found in just a single cup of soy milk may reduce the risk of breast cancer returning by up to 25%. That's great. After you've had breast cancer, the last thing you want is it to come back. So you're looking at the breast cancer risk reduction and the recurrence rates, both in that 10 to 30% range. Up-to-date studies of thousands of women from US and Asian countries have shown that not only soy foods are not dangerous, they're protective. 1 to 2 servings of soy food per day has been shown to reduce breast cancer risks by, like I said, 20 to 30%. Women with the BRCA gene mutations may especially benefit from soy intake. The protective effect is strongest for soy beginning in childhood and adolescence. And we want to consume soy, like I said, in its original versions as much as possible. Again, going with a whole food, foundationally more plant predominant eating pattern. Risk reduction is true regardless of the receptor status of the breast cancer or menopausal status, and even when taking an aromatase inhibitor, which is a common question. A moderate amount of soy is a whole food soy. Tofu, like I said, 1 to 2 servings a day. Could be edamame, tofu. What about soy intake in children and adolescents? Associated with a decreased risk of premenopausal breast cancer for our teens. Risk reduction of approximately 60% for women with the highest and middle thirds of soy intake. So yes, expose our children. Give them soy in different versions. Let them try them as a different source of protein. Encourage and diversify our diets. Do I need to eat dairy to get calcium? That goes back to kind of a little bit of our last question. So fact, plants are the original source of calcium, absorbing minerals from the soil. So nutrients that are important for strong bones. It's always calcium for strong bones, right? But we need calcium, protein, vitamin D. Greens like broccoli, bok choy, kale, mustard greens, collard greens are all high in calcium. Almonds, beans. It's easier to absorb calcium from plant-based sources than it is from dairy products, actually. The problem is plants just don't tend to have quite as much as dairy products, but like the fortified almond milk is 450 milligrams compared to a calcium from a cow's a cup of skim milk at 360 milligrams. So it depends on what you're looking at. If you diversify your diet, you will get enough calcium in your diet. Most Americans, about half of Americans, still don't get enough calcium, regardless of whether they're animal-based or plant-based predominantly. So you can take supplementation of calcium. You can see that on the slide. 1,000 milligrams per day is what recommended amounts. But we really encourage patients to really focus on diversifying their diet first and using supplements secondary. A recent study compared long-term followers of a whole food plant-based diet to omnivores and found no difference in bone density. So let's debunk that myth. Most studies do not show a protective effect of dairy intake on bone fracture risk. Dairy doesn't protect your bones. In fact, consumption of dairy and osteoporosis showed that postmenopausal women from countries that consumed higher amounts of dairy had an even higher risk of fractures. They don't equal each other. High dairy does not equal lower risk of osteoporosis and less fractures. Okay, so make sure you're getting all of your vitamins and minerals, diversify your plant sources, get calcium from them. Also make sure you're getting vitamin D in your diet. It's primarily synthesized in our skin upon exposure to sunlight. Secondary plant sources include fortified non-dairy milks and fortified orange juices. So the important thing is that for bone health, because we're commonly equating calcium, bone health, is that we get that diverse vitamins and minerals, calcium, vitamin D, and we also participate in weight-bearing exercise and strength training and focus on strength and balance as we age. That helps protect against fractures as we move through life. Does a plant-based diet provide enough B12? Say you become more plant-based. What do I need to be taking? Like I just mentioned in the previous slides, it could be some calcium. It could be some vitamin D, depending on where you live and your exposure and your current levels. And pretty much everyone should be on B12 supplements. B12 is created by bacteria in our soil. Problem is, soil is just not as diverse anymore. So even meat eaters can be B12 deficient, as not many animals are grass-fed. Dairy farm animals are commonly now given B12 supplements even to get B12 transferred from the animal to you when you consume them. Commonly recommend that you should take a B12 supplement if you're plant-based or over age 50. Age 65 and under, this is just a common recommendation. The ranges of 50 to 250 micrograms daily or 2,000 to 2,500 micrograms weekly is a chewable sublingual or liquid supplement of cyanocoalbumin. Greater than age 65, our absorption diminishes. And so it might need a higher daily dosage of cyanocoalbumin. Again, if you have specific questions regarding to your health, you can always talk with your primary care doctor or come into our specialty clinic and get some more direct advice on supplementation for your dietary patterns. It is better to take B12 outside of a multivitamin though. If you are taking it, it's better absorbed when it's taken individually. You can also get servings of B12 if you're somebody who really doesn't want to take supplements and really wants to focus on really on eating whole foods. You can also get servings of B12 fortified foods 3 times a day, but you have to be vigilant to make sure they contain at least 25% of the US daily value on its label, which can be more challenging. These are some different foods that contain vitamin B12, fortified nutritional yeast, plant-based milks, fortified cereals, specific yogurts, some of the plant processed versions, supplements like I mentioned before, or energy bars. Again, it's a little bit more challenging, and you have to really diversify your diet to get enough B12. When patients are whole food plant-based, we typically recommend that they either with us or with their primary care provider check their B12 at least annually to see what their numbers are when they're getting their annual labs. How about, can I eat canned or frozen fruits and veggies? Are they healthy? Like I mentioned earlier, the daily consumption of whole plant foods is quite low, 6 to 12%. I just say just eat them. Like get them in your diet in the first place so we can get to more of that 60, 70% of your diet is more plant foods. Frozen fruits and vegetables are usually harvested at peak ripeness and retain their vitamins and minerals. Canned products are fine. They can be cost effective as well, but you need to be able to check for additives like sodium, sugar, because many of our canned vegetables have sources of added sodium to our diet, which we frankly don't need in most cases. We tend to get more than enough sodium in our diet, let alone by adding it in canning processes. Another way, if you want to maximize the antioxidants in your dietary pattern, is to chop up your fresh vegetables like your broccoli 40 minutes prior to cooking them. Then you get the health benefits from the antioxidant sulforaphane. And sulforaphane is thought to be the main active ingredient in broccoli, which protects our brain, eyesight, induces a detoxification process, enzymes in our body, and helps prevent against cancer. It's one of those nice antioxidants that we really want to capitalize when we're eating more plant forward. Well, the way to maximize this enzyme is typically deactivated by high temperatures. But if you chop it up first, the precursor, sulforaphane, mixes with the enzyme myrosinase. And when you chop it, it activates that enzymatic process, creates the antioxidant effect, which then the sulforaphane is already created before you cook it, and you still maintain the benefit. Or if you buy frozen vegetables, you can add mustard seed powder to your cooked cruciferous vegetables and still get the back benefit of the sulforaphane. It helps to reactivate the sulforaphane once you've cooked it. So you can chop and stop. Or if you have your frozen vegetables, I say just add the mustard seed powder, and that will help to get that sulforaphane back in action. Do plants have adequate protein? Can I meet my protein needs? The myth is you need to eat animal protein to meet your protein needs. Meat makes us strong. You're not strong, or you're if you don't consume meat. Fact is that plant foods, beans, lentils, nuts, whole grains can provide ample protein for all stages of your life. Where do cows, chickens, and other animals get their protein from? They get their protein from eating plants. We're just eating the middleman in most occasions. So the US recommends daily allowance for protein about 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight for inactive people. Slightly more for active, pregnant, or elderly population, anywhere from 1 to 1.2 grams per kilogram of ideal body weight. So if you're about 150 pounds, it's about 55 grams of protein a day. The trend right now is people hearing really, really high protein amounts. You should get double your body weight in protein, get your body weight in protein. You don't need that much. The sources from plants are diverse. They contain no cholesterol. They have minimal amounts of less healthy unsaturated fat, and are often very low in sodium. You can see them in nuts, beans, legumes, whole grains. There's also protein in green vegetables, potatoes, mushrooms, squash, and even some fruits contain protein. Excess protein in our diet is either usually excreted if it's not used by our body, or can be stored as fat. So the key is diversify and get your protein sources. And you can see that these plant sources have a lot of grams of protein and can be very beneficial for your health. Diversify, include them, and use them more often. And the nice thing about the plant proteins is they contain that fiber component, which helps with satiety. Most occasions, we consume our proteins from sources that don't contain fiber, vitamins, and minerals. So we consume our protein from meats and cheeses. No fiber. Does not help to diversify our gut microbiome. And when we use plants, we really start to harvest the benefit of optimizing our gut health and promoting longevity by using plants as proteins. It is, I think, at the core of a lot of our educational processes in our department, is debunking the myth that you need to consume animals to have adequate protein in your diet. You can meet your protein needs if you eat a diverse plant-forward diet. And just one more thought is that most Americans, regardless of their identification with their dietary patterns, get ample protein. Like 97% of us get enough protein in our diet at baseline. We're not protein deficient. We are fiber and nutrient deficient. Isn't a plant-based diet expensive? Time-consuming? So on the right are some money-saving tips. It doesn't have to be expensive. Whole food plant-based eating can be more affordable than the standard American diet, and I have a source cited here. Beans, potatoes, fruits, grains are found at low costs. If you think about the rising costs of eggs, meats, dairy products, you can get a can of black beans for still relatively low cost. A block of tofu for about $3 or $4. Potatoes, like I talked about, frozen vegetables and fruits, buy ingredients in bulk. Meal plan. Think about how you can use things in different meals throughout the week. Most of these food categories are covered under SNAP. The cost of whole plant foods to prevent and improve disease versus medical care costs, downstream effects, lost wages due to disease, medical prescriptions, etc. The weight of carrying disease morbidity over time far outweighs the cost, the disease improvement, and the improvement in health span from eating more whole foods. We have a tremendous amount of recipes and resources in our office with meal plans for cost-effective plant-forward eating. So if you're looking for ideas, you can certainly go to our website and look up recipes and resources. We have a whole Cooking for Health series where we teach people how to cook more plant-forward and do it economically. We have a family kitchen program where patients come in with children and that are ages 7 to 17 and learn how to cook more plant-forward options, and it's free. So We want this to be approachable to everyone, and more plant-forward eating can be. It's just learning what to do and how to eat it. So lean in on our department, lean in on this webinars, and we will get you to where you need to be. Can I go out to eat? Do I have to always eat at home and meal prep all the time? Will I never go out again? No, you could go out to eat. Sure. There are more plant-forward options. And even on most menus, even Taco Bell has the fresco option. So they use black beans instead of seasoned beef. You can they take the sour cream and cheese off, and they'll use avocado and salsa on it. Other ways to think about before you go out to eat is eat a large salad or a side of vegetables to start when you start your meal there. That bulk, that fiber helps to decrease the overall consumption of other foods downstream and helps you get those whole foods into your diet. Or pre-eat before you go out to eat so you're feeling a little fuller. Happy Cow is an app that features restaurants with plant-forward options. So if you're going to a new area or want to look around town, you're not sure what's on the menu, you don't have time to look things up, that's an app that you can download that has more plant-forward options on it so you can see where you're going and what you might order when you go out. It is all about looking at diversity in your diet, getting these options in at home, and remembering that when you do eat out, there are things typically added to your eating pattern. There may be more oils, there may be more sodium added. Even if it's more plant-based, it may be a larger portion. So just being mindful about the frequency with which you're eating out, and trying to make it for not all 4 or 5 times a week, maybe once a week, as one of your goals to yourself as you become more plant-forward in your eating processes. I hope this answered some of your top questions. I'm very open to asking and answering any additional questions that I'm able to at this time. And or you can come in and, like I said, to the practice, and we're able to answer more questions one-on-one.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's so helpful to bust some of the myths that I know we get all the time in the practice
Yeah.
individually.
Very commonplace. Yeah.
Yes. We did get some questions in the chat.
Okay.
The first question is from Kiana, and it is agave
I'm sorry.
okay to use?
That is one of the top trends that we're hearing a lot of, like, are these monk fruit substitutes, agave. What we commonly encourage is use sweeteners minimalistically, but use them in their original versions as much as possible. So like honey, maple syrup, I would say agave in small portions would be fine as well. Use a natural sweetness from these more often than using a refined sugar or an artificial like an aspartame. And when you place these, think about how can they can be like second place to the fruit. Can you put some frozen raspberries or strawberries on your yogurt bowl in the morning and then use a touch of agave? Like I mentioned earlier, as your taste buds recalibrate, you will need less and less of the added sweeteners coming in. And even things like the maple syrup or the honey or the agave, you'll just need less. So give yourself and your taste buds some time. Read all your labels in your home and see how frightening it is that there is added sugar in or some sort of fake sugar or added sugar in most everything you're consuming that is creating your baseline taste buds requiring a certain degree of sweetness. And then start to buy things that don't have added artificial or added refined sugar in it. Recalibrate your pantry, and then it'll help you recalibrate your taste buds.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Another question, do you have brand recommendations for fortified almond milk? Many I found have a lot of sugar. And I guess I'm going to add on to that question, maybe other milks as well, like oat, soy, any brands that you recommend?
Yeah, oh, I hope I get paid for this with these companies. So fortified, great question. If we're talking about purity first, I always enjoy and recommend like the boxed versions that are just the simple ingredients, soy or oat or almond plus water. They're at Aldi, they're at Trader Joe's, they're at Meijer. If you're looking for the most cost-effective version, the boxed plant-based milks are where it's at, and look for the ones that say unsweetened. Unsweetened should have 0 added sugars. That being said, unsweetened oat milk, during the process of processing the oats, there are some sugars naturally created. So it will show on the label for oat milk, even though it's considered unsweetened, that it has some sugars added into it under the added sugars. Don't be as concerned about that in this scenario. They're not adding sugars in. It's just some of these sugars were created during the refinement process, and we're not concerned about that in this case. So if you do like the palate and taste of oat milk, make sure it's unsweetened, like it doesn't have added, doesn't say sugar in one of the key ingredients, but it will say under the nutrition label like added sugars, because that's, and they're actually usually in the boxes, it says a disclaimer like these were created during the process, a hydrolyzation process, these are not added in. So if you want to go clean boxed milk, fortified, like I talked about, at times there are places to buy a fortified version when you want to start to get some of that added vitamin D, which we need in Michigan, the calcium fortified. Some of them are fortified with some of our B vitamins as well. I really highly recommend the Yuka app, and it's YUKA. We can, or drop it in the chat too. I don't know if I'm able to do that. Kara can. It helps you navigate and scan labels of the plant-based milks, and it gives you an idea, or any product in when you're shopping, how much added sugar, sodium, are there harmful preservatives in your food? Highly ranking harmful preservatives, moderately ranking, and some of the stabilizers and some of these fortified milks that are in the refrigerated section become a little, some have some additives that are a little bit mildly to moderately increased risk, they say. So if you're picking a fortified, it may not show as beautifully on your Yuka app as being as clean as some other options. But honestly, if you're looking for that fortification process, sometimes I'll look at like the Silk brand as being an alternative, the unsweetened, but you really want to pick ones that say unsweetened, even if you are choosing one that is fortified. They have gotten on the bandwagon, and there are sweetened versions of plant-based milks that add in 7 to 8 grams of added sugar. And so you can type in any of your favorite more plant-forward milks, and like I just typed in the Yuka app, the Silk unsweetened organic almond milk, and they power rank them like 0 to 100. I don't know if this will even, it's not going to show because we have backgrounds, but it power ranks 0 to 100, and it's 94 out of 100. Excellent. So there's no synthetic herbicides in it. Couple additives with limited risk. And I know when we're talking about dyes in our foods now, and the US government is finally starting to recognize harmful dyes that the European countries have been outlawed for years, we really want to be mindful of the additives in our foods too. So this Yuka app is a nice option to help you navigate some of those additives that you're just not sure about the verbiage and whether it should be in your food or not. So like Silk unsweetened is one of the ones that I like.
Great, thank you. And thanks for the app recommendation. That's great.
Hey, you're welcome.
The next one is a great question. Do these plant-based calcium sources need to be cooked in order to have the most calcium absorption?
Now, calcium from plants is better absorbed than animals. I'm going to say that to our dietitians. I am not sure the best absorption, and I'm going to defer that to our dietitians to see if maybe Danielle can answer that as well. The best absorption if cooked. I think that when you're consuming your calcium intake, you really want to focus on getting it from as many different options as possible. Yeah. So leafy greens, beans, nuts, seeds, the fortified milks. Diversify, give your gut the best option to absorb. If it's cooked or uncooked, I think you just got to get it in the first place. And I'm not sure of the answer on whether if cooking for that specific nutrient is better absorbed.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a great question for a dietitian. I know sometimes too, it's better cooked with other either proteins or vegetables in order to get the proper absorption. Or I know Krista, one of our dietitians, has talked about that before. But yeah, that's an interesting concept. Maybe something we can post about on Facebook for those of you who follow us on Facebook. Yeah. You can follow up on that because I think that's a great question.
And I think something that I didn't touch on that sometimes the question comes up too is like, the pairing of foods for like maximizing iron is another common absorption issue. So with iron, plant sources are a little bit more difficult to absorb than animal sources for iron when you think about iron sources. So really to maximize the iron absorption from plants, pairing it with something with a vitamin C product, like something like spritzing some lemon on your salad or lime can help to maximize the absorption of iron from your foods. So really, again, I don't want you to think about overthink things. Just think about like how many colors can you get on your plate? How many different things can I get? Different categories of food. The Daily Dozen is a great app and a resource. It's the daily 12 categories of things you should eat and do every day to promote longevity, and it's created by Dr. Michael Greger. And that helps you think about diversifying and clicking the boxes. It's a free app in the App Store, the Daily Dozen app, but it's also downloadable. You can print it and check boxes every day. If you diversify your diet, you really don't have to overthink many of your key macronutrients, the carbs, the proteins, the fats, and most of your key vitamins and minerals. Again, like I said, most of us don't get enough, only half of us get enough calcium in our diet. So we may need calcium supplementation if we're really not working hard at it, vitamin D in our population. And then, like I said, B12 if you're more plant forward as well, are some of the key things that you might need.
I love this next question, just because it's another one that I think we get a lot, the practice, especially from maybe athletes or people who are lifting more than just the general population. So the question is, if an older woman is weightlifting several times a week, does she need to consume more protein? And maybe just touch on too, athletes in general, do athletes in general need more protein if they're, exercising more rigorously?
Yeah, great question. So that comment that I meant about for inactive Americans, about 0.8 grams per kilogram of ideal body weight, is for more like, just the average American. Most of us need about 55, if you're up 50, 100, like I said, 150 pounds, about 55 grams of protein a day. For older women that are weightlifting and weight training, we start to recommend more of the 1 to 1.2, like 1.2 grams per kilogram of ideal body weight. So yes, the numbers do increase if you are strength training consistently and moving through the higher decades of our life. Typically, they do increase a bit. But again, I want you to focus on whole plant sources for health span, longevity. If you're going to get more plants, think about how can I get more in their original versions that also contain protein. So like nuts for snacks, sprinkling seeds on a salad, doing oats with nuts and seeds and berries in the morning. That's a good source of a diverse protein diet, diverse protein in your diet in the morning, afternoon, evening snacks. But yes, to answer your question, there are increased needs. Some of our patients who are specifically looking for numbers or guidance will sit down with one of our lifestyle medicine providers or dietitians and really like get unique protein numbers for their, and it's also a titration of like, how does your body feel after you're eating these higher volumes of protein? It also comes into play too, if you're looking to lose weight, going high protein, like I mentioned earlier, doesn't necessarily equate with weight loss. It can with strength training and building muscle mass. So it's a conversation that can be developed over time. The timing of protein with exercise, all of those things can come into play. And it's a great reason to come into our practice and talk about how to use a more plant-forward eating pattern when working out. Game Changers is a good, if you're looking at athletes, a good documentary about how you can be a plant-based athlete. How many of our top athletes are more plant-forward. And actually, when you eat more plant-based, the anti-inflammatory pattern of eating this way actually helps with muscles to recover and re-energize after you've been, they're damaged when you're strength training or doing cardiovascular exercise, and help to rebuild and re-energize and decrease inflammation. The recovery is better when you're more plant forward. So you'll bounce back quicker after a strong strength training session.
Yeah, I love that. The next question is around meat consumption. So do we have any
Yeah.
data regarding the consumption of wild game meats like venison?
Wild game, I'm going to say, if you are consuming meat products, I would choose wild if you can. The problem with the wild game still is that in order for it to be a couple different things, in order for it to be safe for human consumption, it still has to be processed. And in that processing of our meats become some of those chemical reactions and different additives that are added in that come into our gut, are introduced to our gut flora, and can contribute to the risk of increased cancers like colorectal cancer. We're seeing that it's the number 2 cancer driver in America now, behind lung cancer. And there is a strong dietary impact on colorectal cancer by what we eat. And so if you're going to consume meats, yes, wild, when you can control where it came from, whether it was added, had hormones or additives or antibiotics added to it, certainly wild over farm raised is a better option. The data off the top of my head, I don't have specific data on wild game versus non-wild game in terms of risk reduction for specific diseases. I don't know that it's out there, but we do know that I do recommend that the processing of meats, we do know that processed meats are direct carcinogen. So bacon, sausage, bologna, hot dogs are a known carcinogen for colorectal cancer or top gut related cancers. And because I said they're so high now, we really need to focus. It's in the same category as tobacco, smoke, processed meats. So like even taking your wild game and making it into jerky, there's multiple ways that things become more carcinogenic, but a lot of it is the temperatures at which we have to cook these things to become edible creates these chemical reactions that contribute to cancer cell formation. And then the processing that has to happen just to make them edible and safe for us to consume because we can't just gnaw on the deer raw. So unfortunately, wild if you can, and then start to use more plants more often.
All right. Next question, can you speak to the plant-based packaged dairy options and frequency of use?
So are we talking like a plant processed like cheese? I'm thinking. I'm gonna
Yeah,
go off
that's
on
my
that.
guess. Mhm.
Yeah. So a healthy plant forward diet improves health span. A unhealthy plant forward, we talk about maybe identifying as a vegan diet. Even Oreos are considered vegan. You know, you can eat a lot of plant-based cheeses. Do not necessarily improve your health. So use them, the plant processed dairy versions, sparingly. You can put them in that Yuka app, like I mentioned. A lot of times when we do use cheese, I will say, like, yes, if you're going to make a pizza and you're not going to, you need cheese in the specific type of pizza you're making, use use your Yuka app, pick a plant-based cheese that seems to meet good criteria when you're scanning it, and then use it sparingly. Don't make it the foundation of what you're consuming again. A lot of these plant processed options you will find are high in saturated fats because they tend to use coconut oil as a replacement. So you end up increasing your saturated fat content when you're using the processed versions of these plant-based cheeses. It's the commonly one, or a cream cheese, I would say. So, and be mindful, like if you buy like a plant-based dinner from like the freezer section at Trader Joe's, sometimes there's a ton of sodium in it still. So you want to be still looking at those key additives and be scanning the app, looking at how much sodium's in this. Are there a ton of added oils in it? Is this a really a good healthful option, or could I be making like a tofu marinade instead of, you know, a plant-based process, like chop up some tofu, herb and season it, make it like a feta, and use that as your cheese versus buying a plant processed cheese. So it's not out of the realm of possibility you should be consuming these. It's just like don't make them 80% of what you're eating plant processed.
For sure. And I know somebody in the chat mentioned nutritional yeast. I think if you look up
Great.
or take the time to look up some recipes that are plant-based cheese recipes, there are a lot of different options out there. And it's not going to be exactly like the cheese that you're used to, but with time your taste buds can adjust to those cheeses as well. And in the practice, a lot of us have tried those and really enjoy them. They're really good.
Nutritional yeast is a cheap option. It's in the bag section. It's in the baking section at like Meijer. It's in the aisle at Trader Joe's, Aldi. I don't know if Aldi has it, but any of the other health food stores, maybe $3, $4 for a bag of it. And it has like a cheesy umami flavor, and you can sprinkle it on popcorn, on like a scramble. You could sprinkle it. I sprinkle it on like avocado toast. You can use it in so many different ways. And it gives you that cheese flavor without having the cheese impact. It's also, like I mentioned earlier, source of B12. So
yes. Yeah, thank you. We have a lot of questions left, and I know we're running short on time, so I'm going to pick two more. So the next one is around reduced fat cheese, but maybe just touch on reduced fat in general. I know you talked about different sweeteners, but
and I think I'll go back to that slide that I think I showed you guys about. Let me just from current slide. Let me show you this one if I can pull this up. I'll just pull it over here for a second. Can you guys see that slide again? Let me screen share. I'll pull it up. Sorry. So if you look at dairy consumption, the lower fat options are the better options. If you're going to still pick and have cheese in your life, that's a good option to do. So the higher fat, higher saturated fats versions are ones that you want to start to avoid. So if you do dairy, from a health standpoint, or low mozzarella, low fat, still do that from a cholesterol standpoint, health standpoint. And there's also, high fat diets, linkages with diabetes, the overall inflammatory process that happens in our body from very high saturated fats, high processed diets, cause a negative impact on our operating systems for our body. And so what we want to be naturally and more anti-inflammatory, eat more anti-inflammatory foods. And dairy tends to be more pro-inflammatory from like a fats content standpoint. From the milk proteins, innately, like the casein and the other milk proteins tend to be more pro-inflammatory in our body and linkages with cancer risk. And then also the innate structure of proteins in animals is metabolized differently and creates more of an inflammatory process in our body than plant proteins. And so there's a number of different ways in which animal proteins are shown to be more harmful to our health than helpful. And so when you look at eating more plant proteins, we actually see some of our anti-inflammatory markers go down in our body, our CRP. And so we want to think about eating plant proteins, diversity of plants, like I mentioned. Really work on, if you're going to pick a dairy product, pick one like a low fat option becomes a better option than the highest saturated fats. If you're going to consume cheese, as a lot of our culinary experts and chefs say, like choose a very hard cheese so that you don't eat as much of it. Something that's very, has a very hard taste. So you're not going to eat the whole block of cheddar as a snack. So work on those things, and I think you'll start to see some of the health benefits.
Thank you. All right, I think we'll do this last one, and I like this one because for those of you who don't know, Dr. Vollmer has 4 boys. And the question is, are boys not adversely affected by soy? And I know you talked about soy, but I love this question because I think this is a
they're not.
Common myth.
No, so let me go back. I was going to go back to that slide too. So if you look at this slide, yes, 4 boys, my boys, do I make like tofu sticks for them? Yes. So if you look at the prostate, and I think a lot of times with boys, we're looking at, will they have breast tissue develop more than they need? Will they, have a risk of prostate cancer? Will they have, testicular cancer? And the same as it goes for women as for men. And there's studies that definitely demonstrate decrease prostate cancer, actual cell proliferation when men who actually have prostate cancer consume more soy products. If you're interested in research on that, we can put some links in the chat, but Dean Ornish has got a lot of research on prostate cancer and the addition of soy to prostate cancer patients. Boys, yes, because if you look at the slide, estrogen receptor betas are in the prostate, the testes, the breast tissue. And like I said, soy acts as a negative tumor, negative hormonal food, impact, and they work at the beta receptors. They don't work at the hormonally driven alpha receptors. So they actually decrease the hormonal impact. So for women who are menopausal, we say if you're having hot flashes, have some more edamame. This may decrease your hot flashes by 20, 30%. That can be a nice thing to have when you can't sleep at night due to hot flashes. So for men, boys, yes, have some edamame. Make some, like I said, like some tofu sticks for your kids. You know, it's okay. It's anti-proliferative, tumor suppression, not hormonally driven, where soy works at those receptors. So we're going to debunk that myth, outdated research. Soy is protective against hormonally sensitive cancers and will not cause tumor growth.
Thank you. All right, I think we're at time, but thank you so much. This was so informative and helpful. And thank you for all of the questions for those of you that stuck around as well. And
Yeah,
we will see you
appreciate it.
next time. Yeah.
Come in and see us. Appreciate it. Have a great day.